Okay, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, you can see with me, I've got very famously Todd Conklin with me. Todd and I are old buddies from decades ago, or maybe just 1 or 2 decades, Todd. I'm
No,
not
I think
sure.
I bet you I bet well, I'm sure it's more than two.
I think it's more than two. Yeah, we've been talking for a long, long time. And we both didn't change one bit. We still look as young as ever since we started talking. And but we're going to have a little bit of a chat about Safety on the Edge conference, which is happening 4 to 7 May, and Todd is our keynote speaker on the day. But also, more importantly, we have every year with our conference we have 4 lifetime achievement awards, and in our first year last year we had Professor James Reason, Dr. Woods, Diane Vaughan, and Carlene Roberts. So very notable academics in this world. Unfortunately, for those who may not know, Professor Reason passed away just in February, I think it was, just before the conference, and he received his award in absentia. Posthumously. Posthumously. And this year, Carl Wick is receiving his in absentia. And the other most important announcements around this is that Todd is also receiving our lifetime award.
Does that mean my lifetime's over? Do I have to exit
No,
stage
we
left?
have a second award, award 2.0. If you do another 20 years of amazing work, Todd.
That, my friend, will not happen. Guaranteed.
Oh well, then it's on. Then this is the last one we can
This
give
is
you.
it, baby. There's
This
no
is it.
more.
And then also Amy Edmondson and also Tom Kraus. And we think that's a really broad scope of recipients, and we're very proud of these lifetime award winners that we have. So Todd, thank you for all the support you gave us on Safety on the Edge. It's made a big difference for us.
Do
People,
you remember when you did that first Safety on the Edge in Australia?
that was in 2014. And that's
2014.
where you and I worked together the first time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe I should talk a little bit about it. People don't know about that, but yes, Safety on the Edge. The name actually
Well,
came from that.
yeah. We actually worked together at ASSE. We both
ASSE.
presented at the first meeting where they introduced sort of human factors, human performance. You and
Exactly.
I did a back to back for the whole morning.
That's
And
right. Yeah,
I can't remember what year that was either.
yeah. That was
It was
also
in San Antonio. I remember that.
San Antonio. Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, I interrupted.
Oh,
Safety
then
on
we
the
went
Edge in
to
Australia.
yeah. Then we went to Australia, and what I loved about that trip was you, Sidney Decker, Professor John Adams.
Yeah, John Adams was so fun
And he was great to work with. And
and so
Rob
funny. He was
Robson,
a funny
yeah, he had
person.
this dry humor. It's almost,
Yeah,
it was like,
yeah.
but he was a giant with insight and wisdom. And but what I loved about that is that we had 3 cities: Brisbane, Melbourne, and Perth.
Perth, yeah.
And I remember in Melbourne, we were stared at by we had about 30, 40 line managers sitting there. They looked at us as if we were from another planet.
Yes.
The whole new view was just so maverick, and it was just amazing. And you can think about it, that's where we started, isn't it? And
Yeah.
where are we today with this whole thing? It's just absolutely phenomenal and incredible how this evolved. But that's my first question I wanted to ask you, Todd, is with this traction of hop globally, and it's probably getting a really global phenomenon. Um, what do you think people are still getting wrong when they
Well,
when they adopt it?
I think that's a really interesting question because I would like to think, and I think this is what Eric Hollnagel is saying in his decremental, I can't even talk, um, discussion that he's having now. I'm not sure hop is new. I think it's next. And I think the difference between new and next is probably something we should pull a string on.
I think that's probably very true. Yeah.
But to answer your question, what I think the human performance angle, the safety differently angle, whatever you want to call it, does is it really changes the way the organization thinks about the workforce.
Yeah.
So if you ask me what the one most important part of this potentially controversial view when we were in Melbourne across from the
Yeah.
2020 cricket pitch is that we said the worker's not the problem. The worker's actually the problem solver. The worker's actually the solution. And because they're the solution, they're probably a resource to be tapped into
Mm.
to better understand and learn work as it's actually done. And that's what I think it does. Now, why that's controversial, I'm not really certain. I don't understand why some people desperately hold on to the fact that we have to do safety to the workforce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe it's a moral obligation or an ethical obligation, but it doesn't make sense to me, at least, that asking workers to be more safe is not nearly as effective as asking workers what they need in order to do safer, more reliable work, which seems to be much more effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the data shows that, even though lots of people have come up with these very controversial studies where asking a workforce what to do makes them more dangerous. That's simply, I mean, that's not true. And those are unusual and pretty specific research projects, but they don't really reflect reality. So I don't know, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether we I think you're absolutely right that this it seems almost weird that that's a controversial statement. It isn't. That is something. I mean, if you think back of Edward Deming,
Yeah. That's where. But remember, Corey, or we talked about this earlier, but maybe not on a podcast, so other people don't know we talked about this. There are lots of people in the world now that have no idea who Deming is.
that is the
Had
most
not heard
yeah,
of Deming.
yeah, and yet he's probably the foundation of a lot of thinking in the management world.
Oh, for sure.
Not probably, he's definitely. I mean, if you think about lean and everything that's coming around in Toyota, that is all from there. And yet,
Yeah.
uh, people don't even know who he is, and that is. But coming back to the issue of, I wonder why we haven't cracked, not we, but why it hasn't been cracked yet. That there is, I think it comes down to safety is still seen as we got to make the work environment safe for people to work in. And I think the notion of people, it rather says we got to make we are got to create a work environment in which safe work can be done. And that's a very fundamental shift. And I don't think that has been cracked yet in so many organizations.
Well, but that's the idea. So think about that, because that's the idea that we have to remove risk or remove harm, right?
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think is so interesting, and I hate to say this, but kind of obvious to me, is that I'm not sure we can ever remove risk.
No,
Well, in fact, I'll boldly tell you, I think we can't remove risk,
yeah.
because risk is dynamic, it's constantly in motion, and so we'll never make the workplace safe. We'll make the workplace safer,
Safer, yeah.
but we're not going to make it safe. What we do is prepare the workforce for the inevitable variation or upset that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And what I think is more interesting is that organizations that are ready to fail better than organizations that are surprised by failure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that is, if we create a notion of to do safe work in a risky environment, is that the focus, to do safe work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's much more um is the word I want to use, realistic. I think that's a much more effective way to think about it, because then that puts the onus for doing safe work not solely on the back of the worker doing the work, but it also spreads the accountability. It spreads
Yeah.
the responsibility for doing safe work throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And I think
Right to leadership.
yeah, that's the big shift that's happening. It's really easy when you say that this is the worker's problem, because what you're also saying without saying it is that it's not management's problem.
Yeah. 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 That I wonder if that's the uncomfortable thing. That,
Well, don't you think it is? I mean, I think that's a big part of it. It's scary to a leader when they realize something bad has happened and the origin for that bad thing happening hits closer to their desk than it does the shop floor.
yeah, but that's why it was so uncomfortable. That's why it was so comfortable for, say, like behavior-based safety to come to them and say, we can solve your worker problem because they're the problem.
Right.
And we're not going to sort, you're going to have to do this and this. And then obviously a manager is going to say, well, absolutely, solve the problem for me. Then I can carry on with my work, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I mean, I want to say this as kindly as I can, and I don't have to do anything different.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can continue to manage the way I've managed, or I continue to be the owner the way I've been the owner, or the CEO, or the managing director. Um, you know, I mean, and
Yeah.
it's funny. I know you've had these conversations, but it's so funny when you sit in an office with a managing director and they tell you, this isn't my problem. These guys have to do this differently. You want to say, well, no, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
a problem and it's you.
Well, I remember very vividly, and you and I have reminisced about this many times when we sat in that, we won't name names, we sat in that CEO's office who was going to have his next accident investigation meeting that Tuesday on 4th of July. And we challenged him, you especially challenged him and said, do you really have to do this? Cancel this. And he canceled that meeting and changed his thinking about safety so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that,
It's an interesting world. And you can see why people push back. I personally, I'm curious to see what you think. I, I think them pushing back and making controversy and throwing mud or marauding, whatever word you were using, I think it's relatively normal and not terribly offensive. I mean,
no,
it's kind of a natural response to a big change. And people have vested interest in continuing to do things the way they've always done things.
yeah, and it's healthy. It's healthy for us to be challenged. There's no question
Oh
about
yeah,
it. I love that.
there's nothing wrong with being challenged. It's
Yeah,
just that, after a while you kind of get tired of it, but
yeah.
that's when they give you the lifetime achievement award and you can leave.
And then you can say, okay, I've done enough.
That's right. Flip everyone off and walk off stage.
Yeah,
You can do that.
yeah, yeah. So, with that in mind, we've there's a lot of traction, etc. So, hop, and you said earlier on, it's not the new thing; it's the next thing. Um, is it possible to say that we may become a little bit too comfortable with the concept of hop, that we've lost or are losing this disruptive edge? Isn't that built into
Well,
hop that we should be staying disruptive and challenging?
but you can't stay disruptive forever. So what I think is there is that I'm fully open to the fact that there's another next thing that's better than the current next thing that just hasn't we haven't seen it yet, but it's
So, you,
probably
so, you, so
going to
you're
be
talking
out there.
like hop 2.0?
I don't know. I honestly don't know what it's going to look like.
Hmm.
Um, I'm open to it. I'm always listening for new ideas and interesting things to happen, but you can't be disruptive forever because at some point, what you talk about becomes more and more normalized, which we're watching happen. I
Yeah.
mean, if you'd have told me 20 years ago that there'd be a global interest in how humans perform, I would have said, "Wow, I can't imagine," but okay. But it's kind of happened now, and
Yeah.
the language of safety has changed a lot, and
Yeah.
part of that is because of work you do, Corey. I
Oh,
mean, not to butter you up or anything, but I mean, people speak differently about safety than they did 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, you're so right, and I mean, the whole thinking about safety has fundamentally shifted, and that, well, that's why we give you the award, because you've contributed so much to that. And I think here's the difference. There was a lot of these philosophies around in the past, like we both say with Deming, etc.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was operationalized. It was put in the hands of the safety professional on site, the line manager on site. I think that's what you've done, is to actually create this palatability. Is there a word like that?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Palatable, made a whole new language palatable to people to talk. I've sat in front of people these days, line managers, and they are so comfortably speaking about, embracing the variability in the organization, and empowering their employees. They're very comfortable with that and very,
Yeah.
very positive about it. So that was not the case 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's exciting, and that new language will eventually beget newer language.
Yeah,
So
exactly. We
these
know.
ideas
Yeah,
will eventually set the stage for newer ideas to come and disrupt what's going on now. And I think that's normal. I mean, I think if you're threatened by it, that's more about you than it is about the ideas,
exactly.
because they're just ideas, and ideas are a collective activity, right? It's
Yeah,
new ideas come not from one person, but from sort of a collective group of people who are thinking about and actually practicing these ideas and influencing one another, so that somebody comes up, and Eric Hollnagel comes up and says, maybe we should look at incremental versus decremental safety. Maybe we realize there are two ways to see safety. We either remove harm or increase capacity, right? It's either a take or a give. And that's a different way to think about it. And that's going to probably seed a lot of new thinking about safety programs around the globe.
yeah,
To me, the most exciting thing is, and you see it too, because we were talking a little bit about being in Chile, um, is that the world that traditionally hasn't had the benefit of a long-term safety program development, they're they're catching up faster to these newer ideas. I think they call that a technology leap.
mm,
They're not having to go through sort of the old view to get to the new view. They're being allowed to start with the new view, and that's kind of an exciting opportunity.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's actually quite fascinating if you think about it, because there is still this dichotomy. There's still the old view and the new view, and I'm not sure
Sure.
if Eric Holnagel's notion of incremental um, is changing the language that we have already in the new view in HOP, and that is, increased capacity, etc. But just to think about my concern, let me just backtrack a little bit. I worked a lot of the time. My thinking was on the new view and safety, as we both know. But I have this other side of my company that I could not reconcile so readily with it, and so I created a second company called RiskMap, and that company focuses on basically on old view risk management, if you can almost call it like that. Because the whole focus on SIF risk that came in the last decade is actually an old concept out of the mining industry, but it hasn't really gained a lot of traction. Now it has. Now, and I'm rambling a little bit here, but here's my concern. The focus on SIF risk is doing that with old view tools and techniques as a broad statement. And specifically, the whole focus on energy-based safety that is driving a lot in the utility industry now. And my concern is this, that energy-based safety focuses on the point of breakdown, right there at the front end. And in HOP and in New View, we think so much more about systemic degradation.
Right.
And for me, it's like we run the risk of of focusing on risk in the wrong way by
Right. Or
driving it in old thinking.
Yeah, so I don't know if wrong is a word I would use,
Well, okay.
but you're so Matthew Hollowell, who's kind of the let's call him the face of
Yeah,
energy-based safety. He's a great example of that. He's an engineer.
yeah,
And so
and
his view is very engineering centric, and he
yeah,
really sees, given enough time, opportunity, and resource, he could identify every failure mode and effect that's in every job done around the world because he's an engineer, right? So he
yeah,
believes that at his core. Whereas the people who are more interested in the psychosocial side of safety, sort of the complex side, the non-engineering, non-linear side, people like you and I, we're much more from sort of how humans interact with systems.
yeah.
And so we understand the world in a kind of a different worldview. And part of what I think is interesting is that those worldviews will probably never combine.
That's my concern. That's exactly
I
the
mean,
point.
I just don't see a world, but I don't see the whole world. But I don't see a world. The struggle between linear and non-linear thinking has existed a really, really long time.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, kind of the Reformation and the Renaissance. I mean, we could go way back into history and and talk about that difference, and that difference is there. Part of what we're doing is trying to achieve some kind of balance between the two, because maybe they need to exist together. I mean, maybe not.
Well, they have
I
to
don't.
almost.
I think about this a lot when I think about that behavioral based safety probably was important to get us to thinking the way we think now,
Hmm.
but it wasn't the end all be all solution. It was a maturity step in
Hmm.
getting us beyond sort of this belief that the worker's the problem.
Yeah, or that the
And one
work
of the things,
environment is the issue.
yeah, one of the things that I think is encouraging is that whether you look at Matthew's stuff, energy based safety, or you look at Hallnagel stuff, incremental, decremental, or you look at Pitzer's stuff around, risk competency, right? They all are kind of, in a way, building on the idea that the worker is the expert in how work is done, and therefore that expertise should be tapped into in order to understand how to continue to do work in a reliable way.
Yeah,
I think everybody kind of is at the cusp of that thinking. And I think that thinking is pretty interesting. I don't know. I'm open to what you think. I, I really don't know.
yeah. I'm wondering, and this is just a fleeting thought, is whether we shouldn't, in the long run, see, not whether we should, or whether we will see that safety really has a split. And there's a split into the engineering side of it that has always been there. We remember American Society for Safety Engineers, and this is my issue, that the SIF focus is driving thinking of the 1980s and the 1970s.
Right. And you and I are in agreement on that. I think the focus that's currently being used to understand SIF is wrong, in my
That
opinion.
that
I
I
mean, just
fully agree with you. That's my
I'll
worry.
just in my opinion.
Yeah,
The problem is this is such a complex research problem, because in order to study this, people have to die. So
yeah,
you've got a lot of moral and ethical issues there. And the amount of people that don't die is really hard to measure because mostly people don't die.
yeah. And you
But
don't
my
exactly
guess
know why they
is,
don't die.
yeah, and we don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
were they lucky? Were they good? Was it a
Mm.
combination of the both? My guess is, and we'll just see how this works out. My guess is that to a great extent, extreme energy causes extreme harm. So that's kind of how Hollowell's premise. But my guess is we don't kill people in workplaces because we failed to prevent the accident, because we failed to remove the risk. We kill people in workplaces because we failed to have the capacity for when the event happened, we could absorb the event, kind of more in a David Woods theory. We
Mm.
could absorb the event some in the system so that the consequence was less meaningful. And the place I go to all the time, because I think it's a pretty good lesson and it's getting better, so it's exciting to think about, is automotive safety.
Yeah.
And the one thing we know about automotive safety is that we learned pretty early that you can't remove the risk. And so what we did was increase the amount of safeguards
Mm.
in that system. And then now, as you look at it, we're automating more and more parts of driving so that we can actually build this confluence of engineering controls and human awareness so that we have a system that's much more reliable.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the one, that's the only example. Well, there's probably more, but that's the example that seems most comfortable to me because it's the easiest one to talk about with groups of people.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people get the fact that they should wear their seatbelt. What they don't understand is that what their seatbelt does is not simply keep them from flying out of the car. It also positions them so they're in the place where the engineers have designed the vehicle so that the car fails the way we want it to fail. It fails
Yeah.
with graceful extensibility.
Yeah. Yeah. But then there's the other angle, and just to think about what happened with this accident with the Air Canada jet.
Yeah, the smash into the fire truck.
Yeah. So there was, of course, there was energy was transferred, and it was the controls
Sure.
failed, etc. But the thinking is not about, shouldn't be about that point of control that broke down. It should be what are the systemic
Yeah.
degradation happen up to way upstream.
Yeah. So that's a systemic failure.
Yeah.
And this is something that I worry about is that it's so easy to say that failed because the energy transferred was so high. And then now they're saying, and they should have had sensors on it, right? Ultimately, that failed because that part of the process where vehicles cross runways is systemically brittle.
It was always there.
And it's always been there waiting
Yeah.
to happen.
Yeah.
And it happened, and it'll happen again, maybe not there, but it'll
Yeah.
happen again someplace.
Exactly.
And that's more of a systemic problem. And that's a really interesting problem. And you can probably say that that crash is much more akin to a grade level crossing for a railroad train
Yeah.
than it is because, one of the ways you can stop trains from hitting cars is to dig a tunnel,
Yeah.
right? I mean, right. I mean, that's what they do is they
Yeah.
do overpasses or underpasses
Yeah.
and they remove from the system that conflict so it can never happen, or it'd be really difficult with a tunnel for it to happen. And so one of the questions you want to ask is why don't they build landing strips so that there are crossovers for emergency vehicles near the fire station because they know they're going to have to cross the runway?
Yeah.
Why didn't they design that in the system when they designed the airport?
Yeah. And that's systemic thinking now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that it'd be hard to have that accident if they said, okay, the one thing we know is fire trucks will have to cross this runway because it's right in front of the fire station. And every time a fire truck crosses the or let me take that back. Most of the time a fire truck crosses the runway, they're in an emergency.
Exactly.
So there's super high urgency and there will be goal conflict. Let's build a system where the fire truck, the very least we could do is build a system where the fire truck has easy accessibility to crossing a runway without causing further accidents at the time. And I mean, those are really important questions that they simply weren't asking. Now we have the benefit of hindsight because it just happened, but you could look at every airport. We could go to Vancouver. We could definitely go to Toronto. We could go to Denver and ask the question, when the fire truck comes out, how do we want them to cross this main runway?
Yeah. But surely that we could have asked that question many times before because it probably almost happened many times before.
Yeah.
But it was never that in the thinking sphere.
Right.
For some reason. So it's quite because I mean we can't build overpasses and underpasses on roads because it'll be this hundreds and thousands of them. But on airports, it's very focused, high risk, high consequence areas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it could be done there and should be done there for sure. So yeah,
Sounds
very
good, my
fascinating.
friend.
Yeah, interesting
Thank
one.
you.
Let's. I want to have this. This reminds me of the other areas and of contention that I see in LinkedIn a lot. I mentioned that I spent some time just going through LinkedIn, and I post there because of the Safety on the Edge conference. And there's quite a lot of what's the word, if I can use it, mud being thrown at Hop at New View. I experience it a lot because I post and I get all this flack from people. And so one of the things that uh, is very commonly thrown around is Hop does not reduce injuries. And that is such a common statement that you see. Hop does not reduce injuries. Or where is your evidence? One of the when I was uh, posting about you coming on and as a speaker for Safety on the Edge, there was one comment in the LinkedIn trail that was said, ask him uh, evidence for Hop reducing injuries. And then I posted a piece around that whole thing, why there isn't evidence, because it's invalid evidence, it's unreliable evidence, and there's a whole post. I'll send the post to you.
Right.
I'd like to just how do you address that kind of criticism?
Well, so first of all, is there a lot of pushback? I don't read LinkedIn. I don't really spend like my life is really full of things to do. And one of the things I do is not read LinkedIn because I don't really understand why it exists, but that's a long story. So is there really a lot of pushback on that?
Every now and then you get a flare up. You get
Okay.
and somebody posts, and then there's a whole. I mean, the post that I did about Hop and evidence was, I think, something like 15,000 views.
Wow, that's
It,
crazy.
it
Cool.
was quite viral because, and that tells me there's a lot of people thinking about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
to
so
me, it's an interesting question.
so to answer your question, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question is that uh, I'm not sure and it is really hard to measure this. So, I mean, you're onto something that this creates a lot of complexities. I'm not sure that hop reduces or increases injuries. What I do think is interesting is that it probably changes reporting
Yeah,
of injuries.
absolutely. Oh, well, that was
And
one of my points. Yeah.
and so but I don't think hop claims to reduce injuries
No, no.
because I'm not sure. I mean, I think what Hop talks about is not decreasing harm, but increasing capacity. And so, and I could see where they would make an argument. Well, if you increase capacity, you should have decreased harm. I'm not sure. Accidents are unintentional deviations from expected outcomes. I mean, that's what they are. I don't know if we can control unintentional activities because I think that's really a difficult thing to try to control. Oh,
Mm.
this is I guess the quick thing I would say to you, Corey, is that I I think this is an incredibly complex thing to measure, and I'm not sure it really matters, which
Mm.
is very controversial. What I just said was very controversial.
Yeah, that in the in most companies, in most legal terminologies, in most thinking, oh, we gotta measure harm, absence of harm, because that's why we're here. But
Well, we measure injuries because that's what the regulator for the most part wants us to measure,
yeah, yeah,
and because they're easy to measure. I'm not sure they're meaningful, um, because I just don't. I don't. They're not predictive, so
yeah.
I don't know what it assumes a relationship between frequency and severity that simply is not there.
Mm,
And I'm just I'm not sure that's the way to measure safety.
yeah.
It's I don't know. Old school tells us that a safer organization has fewer injuries,
Old school tell us that. Yeah,
but I
yeah.
don't know if that's true because old school also tells us that a safer organization may reduce the conversation opportunities around injuries, and many injuries go unreported.
Yeah,
So
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know what to say other than hold on to what you believe
Yeah.
because that's what you believe.
That was certainly one of my points, and I wonder uh, if I can tell you one of the things I put in this article was this, and this is very personal to me because it happened in South Africa in a mining company that I worked for, which is today known as BHP, was called Gencor then. And in 1986, this event happened on a gold mine. Two boilermakers were underground going to do some repair work on tracks, and the gas bottles fell over, knocked over, and the nozzles broke off, and it caught fire, and it injected a gas flame against the sidewall, a rock. Not a problem, except at this location, like 15 years ago, they did an experimental spray of a foam called Regiseal that was to contain rock falling on people. It comes out of the UK coal mines. And it was left there because the experiment didn't work, so they left it there.
Yeah, because who's got the money to take it out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
take it out. It's like maybe almost 100 yards of spray, hanging wall and sidewall. So they just left it. But it was a flame retardant, etc. It would only burn if it had a continuous flame source, gas bottles ejecting the
Yeah,
flame,
shot by a gas bottle.
yeah, and extremely high ventilation, which is also what exists on an underground mine. And so toxic gas, polyurethane base, was released into the stopes. And the biggest disaster in the mining industry of South Africa imminent, 177 people killed. And that was the shift of many thinking, of my thinking, etc. But
Right.
here's my example. Those gas bottles fell over that way.
Right. If
If
they'd
they
gone
fall
that way.
over that way, nothing,
Yeah.
no measurement. And how many incidents in life, in workplaces, are like this?
All of them.
All of them are like this. It's
Yeah.
50 randomness involved in all. So now you want to measure safe or not safe against
Right.
those parameters,
Or harm or not harm.
or
I mean,
harm or not harm.
that's the problem with that question. That question makes sense to me if you think about our journey we've been on developmentally, right? That's how in investigations we always solve not for how the event happened. We solve for how the company failed to prevent the event from happening.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And so this gas bottle story, which is really the story of multiple contexts that coexist at the same time, right? That had to, all those parts had to be there for that failure to happen. That's
exactly.
always true. I mean, had
Always
one
true.
of them been missing, had one Jenga block not been there,
Yeah,
then this wouldn't have happened. Right.
yeah,
I mean, we know that. So we tend to look at the investigation as a story of how we failed to prevent it. And we don't talk about the much richer how this happened. Right. And that's a part of what that injury question is asking as well is we want to measure safety success by the reduction of injury. But in fact, the one thing we can't control are all the millions of fragile, brittle parts of the system that are waiting to hurt a worker. Where the injury question became less interesting to me is years ago, I was doing a workshop and this old laborer, I mean, I don't think he was anything special. He was just this old dude who came up to me after class and said, I learned something really early in my career and I want to share it with you. And I said, sure. Same thing you'd say. And he said, every hand injury is a function of the shit you make me move. And that changed my world.
yeah,
I mean, hand injuries aren't about hands. Hand injuries are about the complex, oftentimes really risky, sharp, pointy, heavy crap we make people move.
yeah.
And so you don't fix hand injuries by asking people not to hurt their hands. You fix hand injuries by thinking of better ways to move
To move
risky,
stuff.
heavy, pointy, sharp, rusty
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And
Right?
you ask that worker, how can we do it different? And they probably know.
Right. Well, they're going to tell you the answer because they've thought about it because they have to move all that stuff all the time.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. No, and that, I mean, that's such a subtle, but such an important example of
Yeah.
the shift in thinking
Yeah.
that we experience. And that, to me, this is, I mean, we can carry on for
I know,
hours
but
on this.
we're out of time.
We're out of time, yeah. So we better call this to a halt. But maybe I just mentioned we have a workshop, you and I, on the 7th of May after the SODI conference, although it is sold out already.
So
Um,
don't promote a workshop that's sold out.
and that's why I want to promote the other three workshops because
Oh,
this one
okay,
is
okay.
sold
Fair
out.
enough. Fair enough.
The other three workshops, one is Kathy Seabrook and Andresa Hernandez from Siemens. They're going to do have a look at the value of safety. So please enroll for that. Or there's a great one, James Pomeroy and Jean-Christophe Lecause, about safety imaging, safety illusions, safety thinking. How we construct safety through imaging. And then the third one is going to be about artificial intelligence. So I just wanted to put a quick run in for those other three workshops. Todd and I, no more. It's done. You can't you can't do that one anymore.
The
But
old
we're going to see you
old
at.
bald guy workshop is full.
But we're going to see Todd is a keynote for the opening on the 5th of May. And we have a gala evening that evening where you're gonna wear your tuxedo, I think. No, it's not a tuxedo night.
I have one.
Yeah, you have one.
Oh, I
You'll be
look
the
good.
first.
I look good. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful chat, and we should have another one for all the other stuff that we can talk about.
Yes, we should, by golly.